evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's Committee of the Whole meeting. This meeting is called to order. Let the record show that all the aldermen are present, save for Alderman Bruno. Regrettably, Alderman Bruno corresponded with myself and Alderman Burghardt earlier that he is progressively getting worse with a mild illness, and to top it all off, he's also experiencing laryngitis, so he can't call in. So, I am here this evening at the request of Alderman Burghardt to chair the meeting. Alderman Burghardt prefers to focus her full attention on a few of the matters that are on the agenda, so I'm more than happy to serve in your stead.
I got my agenda. May 14th, I'll be back.
I know, I saw that. The City Council and the department has received an email from me yesterday evening, I believe it was. For those of you who just walked in, you may have noticed that the city flag at City Hall is flying at half-staff. It is flying at half-staff to honor a young man who passed away this past Friday. His name is Jeff Keller, a young man indeed. Mr. Keller leaves behind his mom and dad and his two sisters. And I think that the council would agree, as would the community, that when we lose somebody so young, the community is often rattled. And one way, I believe, to perhaps share with the parents and siblings and cousins and extended family, and in particular the entire younger community of Geneva, that not only do we care, but we share in their grief, is to offer some sort of condolence. And I believe the best way to offer that condolence is to show that the entire community mourns with that family. And we do so by lowering the flag to honor not only Jeff, but to let his family know that we are thinking about them and we care about them as well. So if I may, just begin the meeting with a moment of silence so that we can extend our sympathies and our support to the Keller family. Thank you very much. Item 2, ladies and gentlemen, is to approve the Committee of the Whole minutes from the April 9, 2018 meeting. Is there a motion? Alderman McGowan makes the motion. Marks makes the second. Any questions or comments regarding the minutes? Seeing none, hearing none. A voice vote is sufficient. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Item 3, items of business. 3A is to proclaim May 2018 as Mental Health Awareness Month. And we have some very distinguished guests with us this evening. You guys are giggling, aren't you? Distinguished, indeed. From Tri-City Family Services. My friends, Amanda and Michelle and Jules. Who would like to join us at the podium? Amanda. Miranda Barfus. Good Lord. Miranda, welcome. Oh, and Dr. Jules is coming too.
Thank you so much for having us here. I'm
Welcome.
the Director of Development for Tri-City Family Services, and Jules is our clinical director. So she's more comfortable in the therapy room, but she's the one doing all the hard work every day, treating our therapists to embrace our family-based approach for children, adolescents, our adult counseling, our counseling for seniors, all at an affordable, accessible price for all the community members. And so as May is Mental Health Awareness Month, we always like to kind of champion breaking the stigma for mental health concerns and raise visibility for the affordability of our services, the accessibility that we think it's a right for people that regardless of their income, they should be able to access quality, compassionate mental health services to help them and their families. And so we're very grateful to receive the proclamation, and we hope that the City of Geneva will continue celebrating with us Mental Health Awareness Month and continuing to share the important message that there's no shame in having a mental health concern, and all those problems that people suffer in silence with, they should not be silent about, because there is help right here in town.
Absolutely. And that help's been going on for decades.
Yes, we just celebrated our 50th anniversary, so we're into year 51.
Absolutely. And you will be, ladies and gentlemen, should notice that in the month of May, you will see beautiful green ribbons
Yes, the mental health awareness ribbon color is this bright green.
Yes.
That I'm not wearing, it's drab green, but we'll switch once the May starts. And so when you do see those ribbons, give a thought to mental health awareness and helping to break that stigma.
I was visiting with Ms. Rollins earlier, and she shared with me a statistic that I thought was shocking. And Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the statistic is that the number one reason why people are admitted to a hospital in Kane County is because of mental health issues. Is that?
That is correct, and there's, you know, the national
that should settle in. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It's also 1 in 5 that will experience a mental health crisis at some point in their lives.
What do we do as friends and neighbors to address this in a proactive and compassionate way?
We need to be supportive of our friends and neighbors, always talk about emotional and mental health concerns, and always support the accessibility of quality counseling services. Support it being funded by insurance, included in Medicaid, Medicare, everywhere, and then also a sliding fee scale in order to make sure that people don't have income barriers to getting the help that they need.
And I think it helps just to share their story, listen to their story. It's just a story about them. Everyone else has a story too. So just kind of normalize it and let them know that you're there for them and other people are there for them.
Any questions? Yes, Mr. Kilbrick.
It's really ironic that you're here this evening. I just was watching the evening news at 5:30 before coming to the meeting, and they were talking about mental health issues, especially as it relates to youth, and they were referring to challenges of parents dealing with children with mental health issues. That in 40 states in the United States, a 12-year-old to an 18-year-old can deny mental health assistance or committed to a hospital as it relates to mental health issues.
No, they still can be up to the age of 18. They can still be committed.
Well, that's inconsistent with what I heard in the news
Oh,
tonight.
out of 40 states, you said.
Right.
Okay.
I don't know what it is in Illinois.
It's not that in Illinois.
Yeah,
I'll
Okay.
preface that.
But in other words, though, a 12-year-old can deny mental health assistance if the parents feel as though it's necessary. And it said that there are only 8,300 youth clinical psychologists in the United States, and that there are estimated 17 million children that are dealing with mental health issues in the United States. So that ratio is it would seem to be disturbing. So again, I commend your work and everything that Tri-Cities does for Geneva and for Kane County. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the dais? City Attorney Radovich saw the same news story and just shared with me this depressing statistic that there are 8,300 psychologists in the United States expected to serve some 17 million people. Minors. That's staggering.
They did say 40 states, didn't they? Yeah.
They did. Some states as young as 12 couldn't deny
Yeah.
being committed into a mental health facility.
How many folks do you serve annually?
Nearly 4,000 across programs in our last fiscal year. This fiscal year, we expect to go over that 4,000 mark.
And do you see as stated in some remarks earlier, do you see the stigma being, if not shattered, at least slightly torn?
I think it's bending, yes.
It is. I mean, ironically, I'll have some young teenage girls I'll just use for example, and they'll be sitting in the waiting room, and if it's spring break or summer break and they're out and about, they'll have their friend come along. Parents don't mind that. Kids will tweet that they're sitting here or there. Oh, I know that place. My friend goes to counseling with that therapist there. So I think that the younger generation is more open to, I mean, I think a lot of things happening. Mental health is in the news more. They're impacted in a more significant way than they were 10, 20 years ago. And they're talking. They're talking about, I had a young lady in 8th grade say, I don't understand, just when I started here, you asked me questions I never thought about before. She said, how come they do, you know, physicals and dentals and eye exams? Why aren't we giving these kind of exams for kids each year when they start school? That was pretty genius of her.
Smart.
That is. Do we have a motion and a second?
We do not.
We do not. Who would like to offer the motion to so proclaim? Alderman Marks proclaims the month of May as Mental Health Awareness Month in the city of Geneva, seconded by Alderman Swanson. Last chance. Any questions or comments from the members of the committee? Or anyone in the audience for that matter?
I'd like to know what the most common problems you find in young people.
The question was just for the audience tuning in at home, and there are millions of people right now, Dr. Jules, tuning in to watch you. What are the most common challenges or problems by our youngest people?
Anxiety and depression. It's that way for the adults we see, for the youth that we see. I think it's a combination of family structures changing, social media, which can be good, and media in general seem to be really impacting. They can be great, and it can be very harmful as well.
All in favor, oh, excuse me, Alderman Gowan.
Thank you. I want to sneak a question in. Is there currently a shortage of mental health professionals nationwide, or would you say that there are people that are qualified to work in a mental health profession helping others, but the funding isn't there to provide jobs for those people, so they end up doing something else?
Well, I think there's a shortage for mental health professionals. I'm going to say like school social workers. They're overburdened in every school district that I've seen and worked in. I also think that there is even bigger than the psychologist crisis is psychiatry. There is no child psychiatrists in the area. And there's a difference between those who treat children 12 and under and those who treat children 12 and over. And the 12 and under psychiatrists, it's probably the biggest crisis.
We do have 2 consulting psychiatrists on our staff, but they are pulled in many different directions.
So is it, let me keep my train of thought here, sorry. Are there job openings, or like, for example, Delnor Hospital, there isn't a single child psychiatrist on that campus, or do they have to refer to DuPage or something?
They refer to CDH because
Yeah.
that's where their mental health services are housed.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? We have a motion and a second to so proclaim May Mental Health Awareness Month in the city of Geneva. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Miranda
Thank you.
and the good doctor.
I'm not a doctor.
She's not.
I'm not a doctor.
Well, that's what they told me to tell you, that you were Dr. Jules. I can't,
Okay.
whatever Miranda says, I do.
Okay. Thank you.
Just let it hang down.
Item 3B, ladies and gentlemen, is to recommend approval of a special event application for Zelmer Childhood Disease Foundation for the Fox Valley Craft Beer 5K Run Walk on July 7, 2018, contingent on affected businesses' approval. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Marks, seconded by Cummings. I know we have the applicant with us this evening. Are there any questions or comments from the dais for the foundation? Any questions or comments from the audience? A voice, oh, Alderman McGowan? That's all right.
I need to raise my hand a little quicker. It's been a while since I've heard about the Zelmer Childhood Disease Foundation. Did you say someone is here?
Yes.
That could maybe come and tell us a little bit about the foundation and what they hope to do with the proceeds from this 5K? I don't know, maybe they're not here.
Yeah, I thought Mary, did I see Mary Agnes here? I can't see that far, sorry.
That's okay. I could look it up. I'm sure they have a website with all their
They
information.
do. The foundation itself
Yeah.
tends to identify a particular childhood disease or issue that they would then channel those funds toward. They've done St. Jude a number of years. They do some of the groups in Chicago as well. They tend to spearhead these events, coordinate, orchestrate, and host on behalf of the charities as kind of a third-party organizer, if you will. So, yeah, and of course, they reside here in town, as you probably know. So they live on.
Thank you. Thank you, Zelmers.
Yes, yeah, they're good folks.
Yeah.
Voice vote is sufficient, folks, to approve based on the contingencies established in item 3B. Please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Moving on. Item 3C is to recommend draft resolution awarding bid and contract to Geneva Construction Company in an amount not to exceed $1,934,623.47 for the 2018 street improvement project. Is there a motion? Motion by Alderman Marks. Seconded by Alderman Ruby. We have our director and our city engineer with us this evening. Any questions or comments for either from the dais? From the audience, any questions or comments? We are not using asphalt. We're just going to put gravel down on the roads this year just to save a few bucks. So if anybody's upset with that, let us know. Is that true, Brian? Or?
We don't call it asphalt.
No, I know you don't. Bituminous something or other. We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes, folks. Item 3D is to recommend draft resolution waiving bidding process and authorizing execution of a memorandum of understanding in the amount not to exceed $65,955.50 with Hogan Design and Construction pending final legal review for Stephen Street and North First Water Main Replacement Project. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Alderman Kilberg makes the motion. Alderman, I believe, McGowan makes the second. Questions or comments?
Let me just confirm with Director Babica. Rich, I believe final legal review's been done, unless there's something that comes back from.
There was
the other
correspondence earlier today that review was approved by you as well as Hogan, so is that, does that stand?
Correct. I had received an email from Hogan Design and Construction Corporation on Friday afternoon, which was too late to include it within the packet.
We'll let this matter stand on the off chance there's something between now and the council meeting, of course, but any questions or comments from Mr. Babic or Mr. Radovich? Seeing none, hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Item 3E, folks, is to recommend draft resolution executing the exercise of third year of purchase agreement, census water meters, and ERTs throughout fiscal year 2019 in an amount not to exceed $300,000 from HD Supply Waterworks. Is there a motion? So moved. Marks makes the motion. And Berghart makes the second. Questions or comments? Mr. Van Gescam is with us this evening. Alderman McGowan.
I'll ask a question. You know, it seems a little confusing, when you read through the info on this in the packet. It's like we're replacing some of the meters, but it depends on what size they are. Could you maybe, for my own clarification and for others
Sure.
listening, kind of walk it through?
Sure.
Walk us through what's
The
going on?
majority of the meters that we're going to replace are either 3/4 inch or 1 inch meters, because the majority of them are residential meters. But there will be a few 1.5 or 2 inch meters or 3 inch meters that will be lumped in there. So I can't give you an exact number of meters that are going to be replaced, but the $300,000 budgeted will replace approximately 1,000 meters. This year we replaced 1,075. So it's in that area. That's why we included all the prices for the meters that are in that packet. So we just don't have the exact number of each size meter that we're gonna replace next year.
So, and when you say like a 3/4 inch meter or a 3-inch meter, like what does that refer to? What
It
does that
just
mean exactly?
is the actual size of the meter. The majority of residential homes, older, are 3/4 inch service lines. So it's a 3/4 inch pipe that services the house. Newer homes now are built with 1-inch services or 1.5-inch services. So it depends on the size of the home, what size meter is suitable for that home or property. And same goes for like a commercial property. It's gonna depend on their use.
And are you going like area by area replacing water meters?
Correct. We do them in routes, meter reader routes, so we're not jumping all over the place. So we try to eliminate those routes that we can from the meter reader and handheld, and then move around the city that way. We started out doing the older meters that we had in town. We still have some older meters throughout town that we are also replacing, but the majority of the ones that we do are specific to a certain route in the city. And that corresponds to the billing of those routes also. And so it's coordination between us and finance. And so we really try to take those routes, and it also, whatever makes sense with the electric department also, because they will follow behind us and replace the electric meters. So that way the meter reader has no responsibility for that route anymore.
So will homeowners be aware of the fact that their water meter is being changed out? Are they gonna be given
Yeah,
notice, or is it just gonna be someone coming during the day,
No,
changing it out?
No, that's part of the challenge that we have, is we have to contact every single resident and make an appointment to get in the home. The majority of the people are very good and very responsive, but we have some that, just tend to wait until we send that final letter, saying that, we need you to contact us, otherwise we may shut off the water. And that usually gets their attention. So, whereas on the electric side, they don't have to make appointments, but I believe they send out a notice saying in this area, your electric meter will be, replaced. But they just go in and are able to do it from the outside with no appointment.
And about how long does it take once the appointment is made to change out the water meter?
Only 15 to 20 minutes.
Oh, that's good.
It's pretty quick.
I think mine is actually pretty old. I looked at it today. You can barely like read the numbers.
Sounds like we
Throw
need to
it
get in
out
there.
so- Okay, well, thank you.
Sure.
Alderman Kilberg.
Okay, we started replacing water meters in 2016. Is that right? The summer 2016?
No,
Or
no,
17.
I believe it was I'm sorry, I don't have the.
2011.
2011 is,
Okay, it goes back that far. Okay.
yep.
And then we've been replacing then, how many water meters do we project there are in Geneva currently? Is it
8,254, I believe.
so we're doing somewhere between probably 750 and 1,000 a year then? Is that
Correct.
sort of the path that we've been on?
Yes, we've increased the budget up to 300,000. We started at 150, went to
Okay.
200, now 300. This 300 is our 300,000 is our max. If we go with about 1,000 meters, it's just as much as the guys can handle right now.
And then we hope to have this all completed then by 2021.
Correct.
So we have 18, 19, 20. Will we finish
Fiscal year, I was
21? So we'll be
referring.
finished in 2020 then probably, huh?
Yes.
Okay, so we got 3 more years left of it.
Yep.
And have we had any service issues at all with these meters?
No.
Has it been pretty
I
seamless?
mean, we have the occasional one that just doesn't want to read, but it's very, very few. I would say, less than 10 out of all that we've replaced.
And then what do we expect to be the life expectancy of a meter like this, 20 years?
20 years.
Okay,
Same with the ERT. The
Okay.
batteries are said to be 20 years, so,
good, thank you.
yep.
Anyone else from the dais? Anyone from the audience? We have a motion by Alderman Marks, a second by Alderman Berghardt, to approve letter E. All those in favor, please say aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Item 3F is to recommend draft resolution authorizing the city administrator to establish a limited period amnesty program for certain fines and debts owed to the city of Geneva. Is there a motion? Motion by Alderman Marks, seconded by Alderman Berghardt. Questions or comments for the city administrator? Or, excuse me, or the finance manager, Ms. Cruz? None from the dais? Anyone from the audience? I can hear you breathing out there. We have a motion by Alderman Marks. We have a second by Alderman Berghardt to approve item 3F. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Item 3F passes. Item 3G, recommend draft resolution authorizing the execution of an intergovernmental agreement by and between the City of Geneva and Illinois Office of Comptroller regarding access to the Comptroller's Local Debt Recovery Program. Is there a motion? So moved. Alderman Marks makes the motion.
Seconded.
Seconded by Alderman Kilberg. Questions or comments? Alderman Ruby, then Alderman Cummings.
Can we just briefly discuss the advantage to offering the discount and if they pay?
You're actually talking about the amnesty
was that the
item.
previous item?
Yes, it
I'm
was.
sorry. Never mind. I thought it was the previous one until I saw this one.
Yeah, this is on the
Okay.
local debt recovery.
Okay, I'm good then, thank you.
Alderman Cummings.
Do we have a hard notification period of time before we send things off to Illinois, or will we have that before we set this program up?
No, they just require for the city attorney to sign off on the notifications we give them. And they just have to approve it, basically stating that we have the right to send this because the city of Geneva and the comptroller have agreed to this, and then we can send them off. So there's really no time frame on this. We're looking at a 60 to 90-day time period before we do send it off to the comptroller's office, because we do believe we want to take a chance, and we want people to pay us instead of our customers having to pay them plus an additional $10 to $20 fee.
So I believe.
That wasn't your question.
Yeah, so we don't have a set time frame, but we will still use all the methods we use currently to try to get the payment prior to sending it to the state. So we will send them notices, we will try to make phone calls until such time as we believe we can no longer collect, we would then send it to the state.
When you say they, we will send them notices.
Whomever the debtor is.
Because under the code, we go after the landlord, the building owner, if the tenant hasn't paid.
Correct.
So do we consider both equally liable, and if so, do we notify them at the same time that there is a delinquency on the account?
So the process now is yes. The process now, when you have if we know who the landlord is, because there are some instances where we don't know who the landlord is, but if we know who the landlord is, we have their information, they will now receive notice at the exact same time as the tenant when their utility bill first goes into arrears. So at that first notice that says, hey, you haven't paid your bill, if you don't pay it within X number of time, you'll be shut off, the landlord will receive that notice. They'll receive the second notice. So they will receive all the same notices that the tenant receives at the same time.
For the buildings where we do not know who the landlord is, what are we doing to find out who the landlord is?
We use the county's website and look up who that owner is and then enter it in a new world.
It's incumbent, and so this is a good public service announcement. If you do own a rental property in Geneva and you are a landlord, you should contact finance and make sure that we have all of your property addresses and know exactly which properties you're a landlord for so that we have all the right contact information to ensure you get those notices.
And it's also not just landlords, it also could be a management company as well, either or.
I'm in favor of this, but I want to make sure that if we are laying liability on a particular party, that we are doing absolutely everything to notify that party that they have potential liability. And I know in a commercial building, the fire department's there annually to every 18 months, asking me for name, address, backup phone number, who the building owner is, how to reach me, mobile, home, business, everything. And the situation I worry about is the building owner gets a notice 12 months after the delinquency, and it's the first notice. And that doesn't seem fair.
Well, and I will say, we've had some hiccups, but we have tightened our processes.
Okay.
So now we do provide that notice. Prior, the notice wasn't given at the same time as the tenant. So now that has been cleaned up.
Thank you for that clarification. Thank you.
Alderman Kilberg.
I had a landlord actually in my ward that contacted Becky and myself earlier this year in regard to this issue. I guess my advice to landlords would be is that they should review their contracts with their tenants, and if they don't have a clause in there as it relates to utilities, that the landlord ought to be in a position where they can keep a security deposit as relates to this. I don't know if contracts currently allow for that, but it would be something certainly worth reviewing as it relates to a landlord and any type of opportunity to retain security deposits.
And we would also recommend, prior to returning that security deposit, they make a phone call to finance, and they can easily call and say, is there any outstanding due on this account?
Yeah.
And we will tell them yes or no, and then they can apply that towards that.
Good advice.
Absolutely.
Good, thank you.
Anyone else from the dais? Anyone? Alderman Burkhart.
Will we continue to use a collection agency, or is this going to skip that step?
We will use a collection agency if the item is $10 or under. So the state of Illinois will not take anything under 10. So we would use a collection agency for that.
But otherwise, after a certain period, we'll be going to the comptroller stuff. Okay, thank you.
Any questions or comments from anyone joining us here this evening? On item 3G, we have a motion by Alderman Marks, a second by Alderman Kilberg. All in favor of item 3G, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Item 3H is to recommend draft ordinance amending Title IX Municipal Utilities, Chapter 1 General Provisions, Section 1 Application for Service, and Chapter 3 Water and Sewer, Article A, Service Rates and Charges, Meter Rates of the Geneva City Code. Is there a motion to put this on the floor?
So moved.
Alderman McGowan makes the motion,
Second.
seconded by Alderman Marks. From the dais, questions or comments? From the audience, any questions or comments? Mr. Petzel.
Good evening, council members. My name is David Patzelt from Shodine Group, 77 North 1st Street, Geneva, Illinois. I apologize for getting to you late today, and hopefully you found on the dais when you arrived a letter from me, and I had emailed that out to you again late today. I was not aware of this item on the agenda and became aware early morning, and felt that as a significant property owner and water consumer within the city of Geneva, thought I should be here this evening to raise an objection to this revision to the ordinance. And not what we are suggesting or requesting is that perhaps reevaluation or reconsideration of the amendment to the ordinance, and that should be sent back to staff through COW, and COW asked for it to return back before them for one more review and one more revision. The letter outlines 5 different reasons why we think there should be an objection. The first one in the staff report leads you to some information that the water billing is related to the electric meter billing. And I'll read from the staff report. It says, the new rate created a monthly service charge for water and sewer. This fee is based upon the size of the meter installed at the service address. The rate also allowed monthly service charge based upon the number of electric meters the water meter serviced. When we reviewed the ordinance, we could not find any reference to that comment about an electric meter and the number of electric meters. So we think that is somewhat misleading to you when you're reviewing the new ordinance. Secondly, staff has indicated, and I'll read again from the staff report, this ordinance is housekeeping to clarify the original intent of the code when approved in 2013. And we don't think this is actually a housekeeping item. Within the staff report, they did not provide you with a redlined, as I'll call it, a redlined or marked up copy of the ordinance. I tried to provide you with what I would call a redlined copy of the paragraph that is being edited by this ordinance. And forgive my typing here. I do see that I have one error in my typing. So if you're at the top of page 2 of my letter, I had in red writing lined out that says with water. That red line should not be redlined out. Those were actually words being added by staff to the paragraph. So in essence, the black writing on that paragraph is the way the ordinance reads now. The red-lined words by the meter are crossed out or deleted from the ordinance, and then staff is adding the words that are printed in red. So simply by looking at the number of those words, as well as the language within those words, we don't think it's yet clear as exactly what the intent was. Further, the words that were added make reference to access to water. We are not sure what exactly the intent of access to water means. We know that anybody that occupies a building, you have to have access to a toilet, to a sink. So you have access to water. Now, does that access mean to water in a public restroom, or does that mean access to water literally within your rental space or your space you occupy? You could turn on a valve and receive water. So a definition is certainly needed as to what access to water means. The third objection is really looking at what the intent of this meter charge is for. We believe that if you look at the definition of customer and then the definition of customer service charge that is within the ordinance, I'll read for you the customer service charge, which is what you see on your water bill, a monthly fixed charge based on the size of the water meter servicing the customer. The charge, which includes the first 100 cubic feet per equivalent per monthly period, covers the cost to meter, bill the account, and provide customer service. So it, to us, is clear that the charge should be for what work the city is doing related to a meter. If there are multiple meters, we believe that the intent should be that there should be multiple charges for multiple meters. You've just heard, or you just approved in your budget, another $300,000 spent on meters, so you need some funding source for those meters. So you should be funding per meter. And we believe that the intent or some work being done on this ordinance may be altering that, and you may be suggesting cumulative or a number of charges based on one meter. Fourth, the ordinance does not define equivalent units or units. And reading the water section of the ordinance, it makes reference to equivalent units, or this word units. And even has a chart in the back of the water ordinance that says meter size or equivalent units. If you look up the definition of equivalent units within the ordinance, it gives you the closest that you can find is a definition of population equivalence. I've given you towards the bottom of page 2, I've given you that definition of population equivalent as it appears in the ordinance, and you can see that that really pertains to sewerage, and including BOD and suspended solids, and we know that we don't want to drink sewerage or suspended solids. So not sure that that applies. So we believe that a reference to what exactly an equivalent unit is or what a unit is should be noted in the next draft of the ordinance. Lastly, in reviewing this and reviewing the water bills of several hundred different clients, tenants of ours, we believe that that there are some erroneous charges or that the billing has not been correct. And depending on where this ordinance goes, you'll probably be hearing from us in the near future about that about those charges. We're not necessarily saying that the charges are not due or are not needed to provide sufficient water to the City of Geneva, but the question is, how are they billed to the various users, and are they being billed correctly? So based on that, we would ask that, again, you would, the Committee of the Whole would perhaps table this or go back to staff and ask for a redraft or clarification in writing to this ordinance based on some of these findings and perhaps what others may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Petzel. Any questions or comments from the dais regarding Mr. Petzel's comments? Alderman McGowan?
Mr. Patzel, thank you for looking through this information, and you've raised some good points. I'd be interested in getting further clarification on these matters as well. But can you tell me, when you say we, who are you referring to?
When I say we, it would be the numerous organizations that fly underneath the Chodine Group umbrella, which would also include our tenants that typically are charged these fees. So anybody that fits underneath that umbrella.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else in the dais? Any questions or comments from Mr. Petzel? Alderman Cummings?
Dave, and if you don't want to share this,
we are going to charge Mr. Petzel for a new carpeting. Is this coming up?
then I understand. But in a building where there's retail first floor and apartments up, Dodson Place, across from Dodson, how will this affect your water bill, before and after?
The water bill will be, well, let me answer it this way. Upon reviewing this language and actually looking at a water bill and looking at the meter charge, which I believe that this paragraph is referring to, I can share with you that the Dodson 8 building happens to have 30 electric meters, has one water meter. We believe that, referring to my item 5 here, that there's been an interpolation that we've been charged monthly now for 30 meter charges versus 30 water meters versus being charged for one water meter in that building. So again, we believe that's wrong. We should be charged one meter charge, one water meter charge versus, but similarly, since we have 30 electric meters, we should be charged for 30 electric meters. So I have no objection to paying for 30 electric meters, but believe that we've been overcharged for 29 additional water meters. And now if we were to multiply that over several different buildings, we believe there's been several buildings that have been overcharged. So that now there is a water fund within the City of Geneva. Do they need to collect those dollars? I'm assuming that somebody's trying to balance a budget, And perhaps there needs to be a way to get those dollars in, and I believe that that's what this ordinance, redraft of the ordinance should do, is be looking back at that ordinance and making sure that the billing is being done per the ordinance and collecting the funds that are needed to operate a safe and good potable water system. So I hope that was a long answer, but I can tell you that checking some other buildings, we have some buildings that we believe that we're being charged for 16 water meters in Dotson, what we call the Dotson 3-6 building, and there's only one water meter. Another building, we believe that we're being charged for 18 water meters, and again, there's only one water meter in there. So the immediate bill, if you just said follow the ordinance, we believe the water bill will go down. However, in the long run, we believe that somehow the city of Geneva is going to have to fund this water, the water budget, and so how are they going to prepare the bill, and how will that change our costs?
Thank you.
Anyone else on the dais for Mr. Patzelt? I'd like to introduce, or I'd like to invite Mr. Van Gescam. And I don't know if Ms. Cruz needs to add anything or not, but if you'd like to. Bob, could you just please introduce your title so everyone understands the context?
I am Robert Van Gescam. I'm the superintendent for water and wastewater. During the rate study that was done in 2012 and updated in 2015, took into account at looking at the fixed charges that were to be applied per customer. And that discussion, when it took place, looked at the multiple unit condominiums, apartment complexes, those type of units where you have, for the water department, where you have multiple units taking into account just one water meter. Now, we cannot, it's not feasible in most instances to be able to plumb in individual water meters to these units. In fact, we've had some commercial property owners that have wanted us to come in just to give some advice, and it turns out to be not cost effective to them. So that's why we put into place, or not for that reason, but for this rate study, and it was recommended by the rate study consultant to use the equivalents for through the American Water Works Association to be applied towards the multiple unit tenancies. And also to kind of combat the argument that they're being overcharged, one thing to look at is the individual property owner also gets a credit of 100 cubic feet per equivalent. So there was some concessions made within the rate study to say, no, we don't want to charge every single unit the monthly meter fee, but we need to include to that 100 cubic feet monthly credit. So that does have an impact on the bill. I think that what we want to consider is we don't want to, in my mind, I don't want to have a apartment complex who has 40 tenants being billed for just the one water meter and having the rest of the community kind of absorb all those costs. We felt, and in the rate study, we presented to you as a recommendation that these should be individually kind of build into the rates. So that's why the equivalence was put in there. So I hope that kind of clears up some of what went into the rates and the rate study.
Alderman Cummings?
Bob, what, in an example of a condo building, say the condo's on River North, how much water that they're getting is not being paid for? Are they getting any water that's not being paid for?
No. No.
And you and I have talked about this a little bit at whenever the conference was, a couple years ago, 3 years ago. The breakdown of assigning fixed overhead expenses out of the water department to fixed revenue streams. The part of the bill that says water meter and customer service. And then assigning the variable rate, the usage, the consumption, some percentage of the bill. The council at that point, we had option A, option B, option C, or 1, 2, 3. We decided on 2, which sort of went halfway, or went in the direction we wanted to. One of our problems, I think, is that we weren't and we aren't pricing our product correctly enough, that it should be more from a fixed rate. If water usage goes down, if this is an enterprise fund, it shouldn't net cost us anything if consumption goes down. If we have our fixed expenses being covered by fixed revenue stream. I don't like the idea of if a building has a water meter in place and is buying water from us, charging them extra and saying that way the rest of the community doesn't have to absorb the cost. If the rest of the community has to absorb a cost, we're not allocating it right in the first place. We don't have enough pushed over to the fixed side. And I'm not sure that this structure is the answer. Billing somebody who happens to have a number of tenants in what will probably end up being a somewhat variable rate. If an organization has 10 different tenants and 4 of them move out, and one tenant moves in and takes all 4 of those spots because they need more square footage, does the tenant or the building owner call the city and say, you know, we only have 1 person where we used to have 4. So can you bill us now for 1 meter equivalency rather than 4? And now we're back into this variable revenue stream that we wanted to get away from in the first place, because it was putting us into a hole financially. I would like to see a system where 1 meter pays X amount, it's dependent on the size of the pipe, and we price our fixed expenses to a fixed revenue stream on the bill. There will be some groups in Geneva that have multiple tenants, each tenant paying electric. Some groups in Geneva that have 1 water meter that will suddenly be getting hit with a bill for several water meters. And that group is already paying for every drop of water they're receiving. And this strikes me as unfair and not the right way to price our product. We need to raise the revenues, but I think we're doing it incorrectly in this fashion.
I guess I just want one clarification. The language change is to kind of clarify what we've been doing, what the practice has been. So we're not advocating a change now. We're advocating just trying to clear up the language. There is going to be a rate study in what, 2020? Is that when the next?
Probably
Roughly
2019, 2020, yes.
2019, 2020, and at that time, we would look again at all of the options and all of the scenarios and everything that we kind of went through in 2013. So this came up because there was some confusion, but we've been billing everybody this way. So it's not It's not like we're billing some one way and others a different way. We're billing everybody this way. So we were just trying to basically do a stopgap measure to clear up the code until such time as we actually take an overhaul look at the whole rate structure again.
I understand the argument. We have been doing it this way, but that's not convincing to,
I mean, it's not an argument. What I'm saying is it was based on what the rate structure was, and so we're just trying to match code to practice. I'm not saying right or wrong or indifference. It's what was theorized or anticipated in the rate structure study when the alternate was selected.
Alderman Cummings still has the floor.
I'll take a breather.
Okay. Alderman Maladra, then Alderman Radecki, I believe.
I'm glad Don remembers the conversation. I had forgotten about it until he started talking about it again. There was a lot of discussion about how we could structure the rates and how we could accommodate the fixed costs and the variable costs and all the rest of that. And as I recall, we chose that middle ground because just as there are people who are going to be bothered by the way that we are doing it, there's going to be a group of people who are going to be bothered by emphasizing or right charging for the fixed rate. And as I recall, that group was seniors and empty nesters. When we ran numbers, we were looking at what would happen to the water bill for a two-bedroom house with no kids and things like that. And that cost got to be at a point that we felt would be challenging to them. So, and one way or another, no matter how we slice this, there's going to be somebody who's not happy. To try and go through that again in one night, I think I mean, we discussed that for weeks and weeks and stuff. So it's definitely worth doing again, but we're not going to get anywhere in one night. Thanks.
Alderman Radecki. Oh, excuse me. Alderman Radecki. Excuse me.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to what Craig just said. I think we were trying to spread the unhappiness as evenly as possible with this. And you know, until somebody really can proffer something that's better for everybody, I don't know what we can do sitting at this point, just trying to match up the ordinance to what the practice is. So, you know, unless there's a real...
I mean, if we do nothing tonight, nothing changes.
Right, I understand that. Right, I get that. So...
If we do something tonight, nothing changes.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
I see Mr. Babica and Ms. Cruz. I don't know if you're stage left in anticipation to jump in, or Mr. Van Gescam, you, of course, if you would like to comment about anything Alderman Cummings or anyone else offered?
I just had two comments to make. For Mr. Patzelt's example, for his house meter, he would actually get 1,600 unit credit for his water and his sewer. So even though he is being charged for more units, he's also getting a larger credit. So in his example, if we did one, it would be, he'd get a 100 unit credit. But in his example, for 16, he gets a 1,600 unit credit. So there is a difference in the pricing. The second thing is for all of the landlord situations we've seen, the number of units and the house meter is pretty much, that cost is borne on the landlord, typically not the tenant.
Alderman Burghardt?
This is probably for Bob. So the item number 4 that Mr. Patzel brought forward, the ordinance does not define equivalent units or units. Equivalent units or units are the electric meters, right? Is what we're talking about?
No, equivalent units are based on the AWWA equivalents.
And now, the AWWA is
American Water Works Association.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Can you
But it came
expand
down
on
to that the code talks about units, and correct, units is not defined. We define units as the number of electric meters.
Yes.
Do we feel like we need to define that in the ordinance? Is it?
Again, there's been some question as to what the methodology is, so to clarify what the methodology is, we felt it was prudent to define what that unit means. But, you know, again, if we do nothing tonight, nothing changes. If we do something, really nothing changes. It's a stopgap measure until we do a wholesale look over everything again.
So is equivalent units or units defined in the housekeeping ordinance?
Not in this instance, no, we did not define the equivalents.
Okay, all right, thank you.
We're gonna, Mr. Patzel from the Pace Bus Stop.
If you don't mind, I'd like to add some more cloudiness to that equivalent with Bob here. I have with me your ordinance, the Waterworks ordinance, and the last page of that ordinance, it gives you the meter size, or, quote, the second column is equivalent units. And you questioned earlier a 3/4 inch meter. A 3/4 inch meter is equivalent units is 100. So clearly there's some misunderstanding. The city administrator said a unit may be an electric meter. So if I have a 3/4 inch meter in the building looking at this chart in the ordinance, I can get up to 100 units. So I could have up to 100 electric meters per that understanding. So there, I think that's incorrect. And I think that Bob, if he looked at this and tried to study it, he may believe rather than, or that unit is pertaining to what is commonly called population equivalence in a sewer discussion. And that pertains to gallons, or gallons per minute. So I think there is a lot of confusion, and you're correct that in the revision of a draft ordinance, somebody should spell out exactly what equivalent units, or in the language, they sometimes change it from equivalent units to just simply units. So is that unit an electric meter? Is that unit so many PE? So that, again, if you'd like the copy of the ordinance, here's the chart, and in the case of where we had a 3 or 4 inch meter, such as in Dodson Place, that meter would give me 1,000 units. So if I pay a 3 inch meter fee, which the fee is based on the size of the meter, I pay a one fee for the 3 inch meter. It says I get 1,000 equivalent units. If, again, we're going to use the definition of electrical, I get 1,000 electric meters or 1,000 customers. There's no way that there are that many. So you're correct that, and there's a confusion on what equivalent units is. And if I could comment.
I just have one thing. One thing that is noticeable in here is there's a decimal point missing. So there's, instead of 100, it should be 1. So just.
Oops.
So. Just saw it, 1.0.
Regarding the credit, yeah, we have no objection that we're getting the credit for a 100 cubic feet of water times, in the case, I think it was 16 or 30. But the 100 cubic feet is, I'm going to say that amounts to about $4.50 credit per 100. But the meter fee is $25 to $30. So if you add, you multiply times, say the 16 users, you multiply that by $25 per meter, but then you give me $4 back, I'm still paying a net of $21 times the 16, which is significantly more than the credit. But again, I'd like to apologize. You don't typically find me in front of this podium objecting to ordinances, and I can't recall the last time I was here, but this one clearly struck a little bit of a concern. And one of the reasons, and you had asked who, when you say we, unlike some other landlords that was referred to in the city of Geneva, we are typically passing all of our water fees on to our tenants. So the tenants that are in our buildings are mainly paying for those fees. However, there are some fees that we have found in reviewing this that there's no meter, no electric meter. It's just a blank, because perhaps one tenant that's getting one electric bill took 2 spaces. We're being charged for the blank meter as well as a real meter. So again, still confusion that leads us back to what is this, exactly is this unit? Is the unit an electric meter? Is the unit a blank? Is the unit the population equivalent? So, thank you.
Can I ask Mr. Patzel a question? Is that all right?
Absolutely.
So talk me through what's the fair way then? So I'm in a single-family detached home, I have a water meter, we use water for our 3 members of our family. You have a 16-unit apartment building. You know, that apartment building, the fixed cost, you know, that apartment building shouldn't be paying the same fixed costs that I'm paying in my one house with 3 people in it. So how do you?
I agree with you, and I think the ordinance that, as drafted today, tries to take that into account. You and your house would have a 3/4 inch or 1 inch meter. So your fee, in comparison to the meter that's in Dotson, that is either a 3 inch or a 4 inch meter. So that the meter fee for that 1 meter, we pay a larger per meter fee for that 3 or 4 inch meter. Versus your fee, you're paying a lower fee because you have a smaller meter. Now that makes sense to us, and that should be consistent. Why? Your 3/4 inch meter, you heard Bob talk earlier that he can replace more 3/4 1 inch meters than he can replace 3 inch meters simply because of the price of the meter is different. I get that, so the replacement of our meter costs more, we should pay a higher meter fee. Technically, the volume of water going through my meter versus your meter is higher, so technically there should perhaps be a service charge associated with that accounting because the dollars are higher. But perhaps not, because just as much as a reader to read yours and read mine, the meter reading time is the same. So should it be based on consumption? I use more water than you use, or this building uses more water than you use. I would think that you make that up in the rate per gallon that you're paying. So there's a little bit of offset there. Lastly, is there another option? Submetering. The technology with submetering is gone quite far, and I believe that's would be beneficial if I was a tenant, say in Dotson 8 or some other building such as River North. If I only live there 3 months out of the year and I don't take baths, I just shower. Perhaps my neighbor lives there 12 months out of the year, and every night they're taking baths, and they're the type of people that sit in the bath and they let the hot water run so it keeps the water warm and it's going down the drain. They should pay more than I should pay. So submetering would take that into account. Would we have an objection to City of Geneva installing submeters in each one of our buildings, radio controlled? No, we would not have that objection, and actually would prefer it so that each tenant is paying for what they're using, no different than in your home or my home. So I don't, hopefully I was too long-winded.
No, it's a lot of food for thought. We're going to have an interesting discussion in a couple of years when we do this again. All right, thank you very much.
Mr. Epps, welcome, sir.
Mike Epps, I live at 126 Grant Avenue in Geneva. I have a building at 205 West State Street, which is next to Old Town. I have 3 tenants as of right now. I have 3 meters that I'm using. I got rid of one so I could save the $25 charge a month for the water meter. I have 3 electric meters right now. I only have 1 water meter. My question, 2 doors down from me, there's another building, 3 units, 1 water meter, 1 electric meter, and they're paying $75, $50 less a month, and they have the same amount of tenants. And the only difference is I have more electric meters. I guess, and I've talked to the city administrator about this, but if you're gonna come up with a rate, just, I guess, make it fair. It's not fair for 1 tenant or 1 building owner who has 3 tenants paying less for water, and they use probably the same amount of water, because all I have is toilets, and I think that's all they have. They should be equal somehow, and I don't know how you do that. I'm not a water person, but I guess that's what I have to say. So, thank you.
Thank you. Back to the dais. Any questions or comments for any of our professional staff, or anything needs to be clarified? Alderman Cummings.
So a hypothetical, well, a real question. First, will we define equivalents in the ordinance as electric meters? I think if there's people looking for some objectivity.
Your microphone, Stephanie.
I think that we need some discussion on this because you can define it as electric meters as we've discussed too, tonight. The other way to look at it is equivalence based on, like I said, the AWWA multi-unit spreadsheet that also takes into account the number of units. And so maybe 2 units are supplied with 1 electric meter. I don't want to give you a yes or no answer right now, but it's something that we need to define a little bit further going forward. But because right now I see the equivalents as the AWWA equivalents with the electric meters, the way our city operates. But I think we also need to look into more of a defined how we want to go about the number of units, just in case we have some units that are not supplied by electric. So that's all.
Okay. The reason I ask, of course, is if somebody reconfigures the interior of their building, knocks out walls, becomes 1 tenant instead of 3 or 4, now we have an issue. Or perhaps a person with 2 or 3 electric meters says, you know, this is crazy, I'm dropping 2, I'll pipe 1 and run that in the building, and I'll save myself $50 a month on water if water is defined as number of electric meters. And because those are so variable, that's where the problems start. Really what we're paying for in water is when I reach for that faucet and turn it, I want water to come out. And that's what I'm paying for. The water itself is a negligible expense. So how do we price water availability? And it might be the size of the pipe to the building, period. On the consultant study from 2015, current charges for Tara was leading into this. Single-family residential current charges were $1,620. I'm guessing a 3/4 inch pipe. A 3-inch commercial, current charges were $11,380. So you want a lot of water, you're going to pay for it. So no one's skating on this. And I'd like to see us lean in that direction rather than asking the landlord, the building owner, to tell us every time they reconfigure and how many tenants they have and if they dropped any or added any. All that's going to do is cause us to staff up. It's going to cost us more when we could simply price it as charging a building, a home, an apartment building, a condo, X amount of dollars, so that when they reach for the faucet, water comes out. Thank you.
Alderman Kilberg.
I think there's been a lot of good discussion. And it would appear that staff would like some additional time to maybe review this further. We also have, I believe, 4 or 5 council people that did not have an opportunity to see some of the prior information as related to the decision of 2015. I would move that we table and give staff some additional time to go through and see if there are other things that need to be cleaned up as it relates to the ordinance. Obviously, we've identified one here tonight that needs to be cleaned up. I don't think we're at a point where we can make a decision tonight. Let's give staff additional time and let them come back and and resubmit this at a later date.
If I may make a suggestion?
Please do.
So the ordinance before you tonight also has a section relating to deposits. I don't know if the council's ready to act on that section of the ordinance, which has nothing to do with what we've just spent our time talking about. We could, I know you love the word, bifurcate the ordinance and go ahead and either recommend for approval or whatever you want to do on the deposits, and then we will take a look back at the other section and bring it back to you when we've had more time to review.
That's fine.
Yeah. So we will consider the deposit issue this evening, but not the rate issue? I would only ask, and perhaps the council or committee would echo this, Mr. Van Gescam, not discuss this evening and not necessarily for discussion this evening, but I think one of the key elements that was missing from this discussion is fire suppression, water pressure, et cetera, that obviously speaks to larger buildings. So next time we have the discussion, I think that needs to be introduced with respect to the rates and costs, et cetera. So we're going to bifurcate this matter.
So
I will enter.
Just so you understand, it's section 1 of the ordinance. We're looking at Title 9, Chapter 1, or excuse me, Article 9. Can't even read here. Title 9, Article 1, Section 1 on service deposits, 911B. So that is Section 1 of your agenda information form that we would be looking tonight.
Okay, and before we entertain a motion on that, Ms. Cruz, did you want to add anything for our edification? Yes, please do. And this is regarding which matter?
The number of units. So I just want to get.
Oh, great. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Sorry. Well, I want to kind of clarify what Mr. Van Gescam was saying. So the reason why this ordinance is coming to you tonight is we do have some properties that are quite old, and they have some awkwardness to them. So I did talk to the city attorney, and this is what we were trying to fix. So one of the examples would be Berry House. So we've all been inside of the Berry House, and there are multiple units. So a lot of those little offices have their own electric meter, but they don't have water running to them. They're just, the first floor. Some of them do, some of them don't. And what we're trying to clean up and make correct is the fact that, should we be charging that unit that does not have water going to it a unit fee? I don't believe that's correct. I don't believe that was ever the intention of the rate study in 2013. So that's why we're coming with this, is to clean that kind of very oddball situation up. And as the city attorney asked me, is this the only one? No, we are finding others. So that's why we are bringing this forward to talk about it, because there are some differences and little nuances that come inside the city.
But we'll review all of that when we come
got
back
it.
the
Okay.
next time.
But I just want everyone to understand this
Sure.
is what we're talking about, just to leave.
Thank
And
you.
then what about section 3? If you want to bifurcate that. Yes, that
Correct.
was a Scribner's error.
Section 3 was just a Scribner's error. Talks about rates and charges. There is no maximum consumption billed at the stated rate. So in looking at the ordinance that was presented, you're looking at section 1 and section 3.
Alderman McGowan was the motioner, Alderman Marks was the seconder. I would kindly ask Alderman McGowan to amend her motion to include just the second item contained within the ordinance received. Section 1 and 3. Which we, excluding section 2 in essence, yeah.
Excluding the second item. Okay, well, I'd like to amend my motion, and instead I move that we bifurcate this agenda item H, what was it? 3H.
Correct.
And we will table the second item, which is our section 2.
You don't have to table it.
I don't have to say that. We're just going to advance section 1 and 3 on our vote this evening.
Does the seconder concur?
Yes.
Alderman Marks concurs. That matter is now on the floor for consideration, additional discussion. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? from the audience? Professional staff, anything we need to add on that matter for? A voice vote would be sufficient on item 3H as amended, which is to include section 1 and section 3, omitting section 2. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. And for the benefit of those tuning in tonight and joining us live, when should we expect additional discussion on section 2? 2024. Yeah, we can't, it'll be, we're not going to give a specific date, but we'll certainly notify, by all means, the two gentlemen who spoke, and of course the council, but it'll be probably several weeks. Mr. Patzel?
Question for,
Come on up, sir.
perhaps I missed it. Do you need to vote on tabling section 2?
No, we voted on the amendment to the main motion, and it was
Okay.
amended to include only section 1 and 3.
So that just automatically tables?
Removes item 2.
It just removes it, so it will be brought back at some future date. If you
So it's
tabled
not
it,
even
we had to
tabled.
have a date certain.
A tabling would require a date certain. That was not tabled, it was just omitted.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Moving on, folks, to item 3I, recommend draft ordinance updating the Delnor Hospital planned unit development, including parking modifications and site plan approval for an addition to and renovations of the Surgical Services Building.
So moved.
Motion by Alderman Marks, seconded by Alderman Ruby. We do have the applicant with us tonight. Let the record show that the applicant has intentionally injured himself so as not to come to the podium several times the evening. He did so playing basketball. Are there any questions or comments for either Mr. DeGroot and/or the applicant from the dais? Alderman McGowan.
I know that this was discussed somewhat in the packet, but what are some of the parking challenges that you anticipate now if you're not going to provide the maximum recommended number of parking spots based on the square footage of the new addition? I'm sorry for making you get up.
No, that's okay. I was up here for 45 minutes plan commission, so.
We kindly ask you just to share your name with us, sir.
Charles Coutier, Director of Planning and Construction. What we're trying to fix is the fact that at our busiest time of the day, our busiest day of the week, there's 1,000 parking spaces that are not used on campus. To continue to build parking at the rate that we're required to do is not responsible use of our resources. The parking issue, that the only complaint we get sometimes from patients is that it's not close enough to the door. Building more parking is not going to solve that. There's only so many spaces you can fit to a building entrance. We have tried to address that concern by providing valet parking at 3 different entrances that are complimentary service to the patients Monday through Friday during normal business hours. Outside of that, you can build more parking. It's just going to be further away, and it's not going to be used. And we're not taking away any parking. We're not saying that we're not going to build parking as we build the addition. We're just asking the rate at which we add parking when we expand the facility to be more reasonable and in line with what the campus needs are, and that addresses the multiple occupancy types that we have on campus. Medical office has a much different parking demand than an intensive care unit does, as an example.
And is the valet parking pretty obvious to someone, like say they've never been to the Delnor campus before, Northwestern Delnor, and they're there for an outpatient or to visit someone? It's really, really like a big sign, like free valet parking.
There's a podium. The valet parker is outside. If you go on the website, it shows you at the entrances which entrances do have valet.
Okay, I'll have to be on the lookout for that. To be honest, I've never actually noticed it, and I've driven friends and neighbors there before, but it could have been that I just wasn't paying close enough attention.
Yeah, and I don't know when that was, but
Recently.
certainly, was it? Okay.
Yeah. But it could have been that I just missed it. So like I said, I'll be on the lookout for that. That's really good to know.
Yeah,
that
it's
they
not,
offer
it's
that
not
service.
every entrance though. It's three,
Mhm.
so it's the Cancer Center, the 351 Medical Office Building, and then the main entrance, which is on the north side.
Okay, yeah, I was at the 351 office building, but I'll go by there and take a look. I live nearby the hospital, so,
Okay.
thank you.
Anyone else on the dais? How long will you have the boot on?
I'm hoping that this is off in 3 weeks.
Should we continue the meeting? Just ACL, right?
Achilles tendon.
Oh, Achilles tendon. Pfft. Come on.
Yeah.
Do you have a golf cart now? You're cruising around the campus?
I have a knee scooter, yeah. I look kind of goofy in it, so sometimes I prefer the crutches. But
Any questions from the audience for our guest this evening? A voice vote from the committee is appropriate. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you like any assistance as you exit?
I am good, thank you.
Are you? If you do fall, please do so in the street. So if you- We move on to item 3J, ladies and gentlemen. Recommend draft ordinance, rezoning, zoning map amendment, the subject realty from the R6 medium density 2 and 3 family residential district to the B6 planned unit development business district, presented by Caris Capital LLC / Citron Place. Yep. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Marks? Is there a second? Seconded by Burghardt. Just for the record, ladies and gentlemen, as we all know, the public hearing was held before the Plan Commission, but by all means, as has been our practice and will continue to be our practice, those joining us this evening who have questions or comments are more than welcome to ask those questions and comments. Mr. DeGroot's going to provide a brief presentation, and then I'd like to ask if the applicants would like to say anything as well, and then we'll turn to the dais for questions and comments, and then to the audience.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mayor.
DeGroot, welcome.
I just wanted to provide a brief overview of this redevelopment proposal. Items J through M on the agenda tonight are all related to the Citron Place redevelopment project. J through K are map amendments that propose to rezone the entire property to the B6 planned unit development business district. The property currently has B2 business district zoning, I2 general industrial district zoning, and R6 2 and 3 family residential district zoning. The B6 district is intended to be used in areas that require special attention due to either physical limitations, site configuration, diverse property ownerships, or functional obsolescence. To address these areas, the B6 district requires a PUD approval as part of any redevelopment. So at this time, the applicant is requesting preliminary PUD approval to allow for the construction of 6 townhomes, 16 single-family homes, a mixed-use building with 20 one-bedroom apartments, and 5,500 square feet of retail space, shared courtyard areas, and a bike path that would connect from East State Street along the east edge of the property north to Peyton Street. Preliminary PUD approval establishes the allowable uses, development parameters, building setbacks, building heights, density, and really the general character of the development. Detailed building elevations, landscape plans, final engineering, all of those documents would be required as part of a final PUD approval, which if these entitlements are secured, they would come back for at a later date. So that's kind of the high-level overview. As the mayor noted, the public hearing was held on April 12th. You should have complete records of that hearing along with the findings from the commission. The applicant is here and available to answer questions, and we also have the screens down so we could pull up plans if there's a need to do so.
Excuse me, thank you, Mr. DeGroot. Would the committee prefer to hear from the applicant if the applicant has anything to add? If not, we can go into questions just from the dais. So, John, good to see you, man. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is John DeClendon with Streetscape Development.
wasn't me. Okay, good.
You have your own musical introduction?
Yes.
That's pretty impressive, man. It's like,
So, we have some information, if you'd like to see it, about who we are and some of the work that we've done. Most importantly, we recognize this is a very important piece of property in downtown Geneva, and we'll treat it accordingly. We're very excited about the opportunity to be working here, and we have a track record of doing similar projects in both downtown Libertyville and downtown Skokie. Libertyville had 26 homes, a historic building that was renovated into 15 loft apartments. There was 5 townhomes done by a previous developer. And then the Skokie project has 20 single-family homes that we're finishing now. The most important thing for us is that when we enter a community is to, treat that with the respect it deserves. If you would check with, we're very, very, very proud of the fact, if you check with the folks in Libertyville, the mayor, the residents of the community. We're very proud of that. We have a track record with them. We have a track record with the folks in Skokie, and we hope to, develop a similar track record with Geneva. It's 6 townhomes, 16 single-family homes organized around a courtyard, and a mixed-use building of, as David said, 20 apartments. It's a 3-story building, about 5,500 square feet on the first floor. And, as David also noted, that we have preliminary design concepts before you, but they will be continuously refined, and presented in the final approval. So I can answer any questions you might have or present some images if you'd like.
I'll defer to the committee. What would the committee prefer? Do you want to, any questions we can certainly ask of Mr. McClendon? If you'd like to pop some pictures on the screen, that's great too.
I'd love to see images. I know all of us watch the Plan Commission.
Microphone.
Plan Commission hearings, but we don't get you don't get the,
We could ask Mr. DeGroot or the magic man behind the door, Mr. Collins, if he's.
Okay, let's see. David, is this, just here, you think? Yep. Yeah. And there. Slideshow from the beginning. So, in respect for a little history.
Well, then one moment, sir. I think it's fair to state for this evening's discussion, I believe, David, you alluded to this. The items on the agenda, J, K, L, and M, are all related. So I think we should have, and we can have, because it's a committee structure, a broader discussion regarding any and all of those elements as they relate to your presentation tonight.
Yes.
Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My apologies for the interruption.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so we'll tell you a little history about streetscape. So background. So the project in Libertyville, we did this in the depths of the housing crisis. It's about a 4-acre site. It's right adjacent Libertyville's very active downtown, which is Milwaukee Avenue. The original plan is, if you look on the far right-hand side, the original development plan was to complete a project with 31 townhomes that were 29 foot wide. The original developer hit the housing crisis, and that project failed. We bought the property out of foreclosure and reinvented it to be single-family homes on 29 foot wide lots, in this suburban setting. So really an urban type of feel to these homes. So that was the I Had a Dream speech picture. And you'll also see the school on the left-hand side there. That's about a 20,000 square foot, the original grade school of the community. And this is what it looks like as of a couple of years ago with 26 residents, or 26 homes. And more importantly, from the, instead of the aerial view, it's what's important is the street level. In the case of Citron Place, you won't have a street there. That'll be a great courtyard. These homes are activated by way of the front porch. And it's really pretty awesome when you go there in the evenings and see all the people on these front porches. They're 8 feet deep, so they're actually a room size versus a decorative porch that often happens in suburbs. Another shot from the street. This is looking towards Milwaukee Avenue. And we did a very kind of a fun home here. This is Sarah Suzanka, who wrote the Not So Big House book series.
That little home there was visited by about 9,000 people in a very short period of time. On average, somebody walked in the door every 1.2 minutes while we were open, which is pretty exciting. We did a zero energy ready home, so sustainability is extremely important. These homes will have, you know, a great energy performance. This is the first home that was built for a single woman and her daughter Sue and her daughter Maddie, and we're very, very pleased that we received lots of attention. You know, not just local attention, but national attention. It was really the reason for this attention was we believe a home is the ultimate consumer product. So we ask the consumer how they live, and we customize the house accordingly, and we plan to do that here. The village of Skokie reached out to us, and they purchased a piece of property with some TIF dollars adjacent their downtown. And we were on the cover of the real estate section, and we love the idea of this headline of paving the way for a vibrant downtown. The hero of the story was not us. It was really the people at the village that had the foresight to buy this property and envision something that could further activate their downtown. We did a little groundbreaking for a single home. One house, we had this little groundbreaking event. There's 250 people showed up. The mayor said this was the signature project for their downtown redevelopment, so we couldn't be more proud of that. And here's how the homes look in Skokie. And we're just wrapping up that now. And most importantly, what we're here today to talk about is Citron Place. So the overall development plan is going from the left to the right is the kind of the gold-looking building is a 3-story building. It's about 5,500 feet of retail on the first floor. And then we will have 2 levels of apartments above, 20 units, 10 per floor. The homes are in purple, and these are, you know, similar to homes you saw in the images. What's really cool about this is the fact that we have this courtyard. And we certainly want to invite the neighbors into this courtyard, and those porches will activate both that kind of that front area and then the side, in the side area that goes vertical. It'll be served by both Citron Place, and gotta go back there, and a public alley on the what's shown on the right side, on the side of the building. These will either be detached or attached garages, and that's really going to be based on a consumer preference. And then down on the bottom right-hand side are six townhomes that'll be 3-story townhomes. Some of the early images for the mixed-use building were illustrated here in the homes to the left. And another image of the mixed-use building early on. In the middle of this, between this image and this image, there was another image that you probably have seen in your packet that was kind of more driven top-down, like the apartments driving the aesthetic. And we decided that we wanted to circle back and go back to what we had envisioned in the original renderings. This is going to get a lot more work, and we'll look forward to presenting that to you in the future in the final approval process. The single-family homes organized again around that courtyard, activated by the people hanging out on the front porches. And this is, you know, kind of the ultimate walkable community. We didn't think we were going to be able to top the Libertyville site, but this one will top that for sure. The single-family homes will be unique in terms of their design character. Every one will be based on consumer preferences, and what we're just showing you is a number of variations, both single-story or 2-story homes and 3-story homes, all with front porches. And the townhouse product is going to be done in a way where we're looking to reduce the massing and the scale by a significant variety in terms of the elevation, both in terms of color and interesting architectural details. The front elevation, which would be facing Citron Place, facing a courtyard. This is the side on the bottom left, facing Peyton, and then there's the back of the building, which, we're giving as much attention architecturally to the back of the building as the front of the building. So that's what we have before you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would your partners care to comment or anything you'd like to add, or we can wait till later? It's up to you, gentlemen. Deal. From the dais, Alderman Swanson, Alderman Maladra, Alderman Radecki.
Did the developments in Skokie and Libertyville include mixed-use buildings?
They did not. The Skokie is 20 single-family homes, and Libertyville is single-family homes, what we were responsible for, 26 single-family homes and a school that was renovated. So we have 5,500 square feet of retail below the apartments.
Right. And in your company, does your company have experience renting retail?
Streetscape is really focused on commercial, and the folks at Karis have that experience. My past experience includes tons of retail in and around the Chicagoland area, hundreds of thousands of square feet of retail on Michigan Avenue as being on the development team. But so we are not responsible for leasing the retail, and I think Jake with Karis Capital can speak towards the plan on the brokerage firm that's going to be responsible for finding the perfect tenant.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Maladra, then Alderman Radecki.
Yeah, I just had a couple of questions about parking, but I'll start. Libertyville and Skokie, did they include apartments?
Libertyville included 15 loft. They were sold as condos.
They were sold as condos?
Yes.
And how many cars did you assume per condo?
We had about 1.2 for the condos.
Okay, and so far, these apartments, you're saying one?
Yes, sir.
So let's quibble about 0.2.
Well, a little over one.
So we're saying 1 car per apartment, and we're saying none for the accessory development units, and
No.
Okay, go ahead.
If we have an accessory dwelling unit, which I didn't mention, we affectionately call that the Fonzie unit above the garage.
Yeah.
We would need to add a parking space, whether it would be, a tandem garage or an area to park. So we would add.
So it would park
a unit.
itself?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, thanks.
I'm just trying to shake the Fonzie unit out of my,
I understood there
I know, so did I. It's like amazing. Alderman Radecki.
Yeah, why did we all understand that when he said that? David, my question might be for David. Could you go back to the schematic that shows Citron Place, the roadway in there?
Yes.
That's going to be a privately, you're going to own that. That's not going to be a city street, Citron Place?
That would be a public street. It would be one way, northbound to Peyton, but it would be public, so we would.
So we would be in charge of maintaining it. It would be to our design standards. It'd be.
Correct. We would
Okay.
be able to plow it. We've confirmed that emergency vehicles can access through there too.
Okay, because I just wanted to be sure that, some other developments that we've had with privately built, privately maintained, and there's problems with the street, then the big assessments come and they don't get maintained, so that's not going to be the case here. This
Right.
would be
The size of that has grown in size throughout the review process and become public to address those concerns.
Thank you.
Anyone else on the dais before I turn to the audience? From the audience, if no one objects, I'd like to begin on the south side of the room. Anyone wish to have any? Yes, sir. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Burns, members of the City Council, city staff. Demir Latinovich, 228 Richards. I was actually one of the people that submitted a letter to the Plan Commission, and it was in the packet, so I hope you had a chance to review that. It was towards the end of your packet, so I understand it's a 500-page packet. What I do want to show is, and I hope that you had a chance to look at it, I had submitted some photographs, and what I'm passing around is a document that has 3 different versions of the mixed-use building. So the first version is what was suggested in the concept review. The middle version is what was submitted in the packet for the Plan Commission. And then the final version is what was ultimately presented to the commission, and then what's in your packet today. So if you had read my letter, you might have questioned, what is he talking about? What's the red siding, et cetera. Let me just say that I do support the project. It's a good project. And I fully understand there is support for that on the City Council. What I had indicated in the letter is several suggestions that would make the project so much better. Those are very small things, but are extremely important. As the applicant has indicated, they specialize in single-family development. The key component of this, the entire development, is the mixed-use building. Okay, not a lot of people will be driving down Richards. Not a lot of people will know about the 29-foot lots. They're not going to know about the accessory dwelling units. Nobody cares about the Citron Place width 20 feet. You know, is it one way, two ways? But everybody will be driving down State Street, 30,000 vehicles a day, looking at that building. I encourage you strongly to require that the building be traditional architecture. Okay, what's unique about Geneva is the quality of our downtown. The high quality architecture, traditional architecture that has storefronts, masonry. They can have siding, top floor. There's a number of opportunities to look at, for examples, in the city. What you're seeing in your packet is a contemporary looking building. What I passed around are examples of contemporary looking buildings that are popping up everywhere in the city of Chicago. I wasn't able to find exactly the same type of building that they're proposing, but what you can see is a contemporary looking building does not fit in with its surroundings, and it would definitely not fit in with the city of Geneva. And in the packet submittal, you'll see that they focused their design on the single family homes because that's already done. It's been done in Libertyville, it's been done in Skokie. I've been to both places. They're excellent. They're phenomenal. Nobody's questioning that. The single family homes will be great. But the main part about this development is the mixed use building. They balked at the idea that the parking in the back needs to be devoted to commercial. That's fine. They'll find that out their own, that the commercial tenants will require certain spaces be devoted. Parking will regulate itself, so that's not a big deal. They're eliminating street trees along Richards. They should put 4 in. It's not a big deal. Sidewalk, a 5-foot sidewalk in front of that building. I encourage you next time you drive down State Street, just see where the sidewalk starts. That's where the 3-story building is going to be. A 5-foot sidewalk is really, it's laughable. It really shows that they've not spent a lot of time designing the building, and I hope that they do before the final design. But it can be corrected. You know, if the first floor is masonry, if several elements of that building are masonry, maybe they put some siding, some shaker siding on the south, east, and west sides, it can be an awesome building. Downtown St. Charles just built 2 office buildings downtown. They're excellent. You know, they have some residential character to them. It's siding, but they really speak to the historic quality of the downtown. So I really encourage you to urge the developer to spend a lot more time designing the mixed-use building in a traditional architecture that fits in and takes some elements from the other buildings downtown Geneva that can be then translated into this building. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, sir. Oh, Dimitri? Demir?
What's your opinion of the library design? It's a contemporary building, and a contemporary design belongs to the more institutional buildings. But even that building includes some masonry to really mimic some of the other buildings that are on 3rd Street. Maybe I wouldn't have designed it, maybe I would, it doesn't really matter. But an institutional building that stands by itself, that's so overwhelming to the single family homes, probably should stand out and be a little bit different. But a building that's a mixed-use building that is about pedestrian scale, that is about the urban design, that is supposed to encourage more activity on the street, needs to focus on that pedestrian experience. So it's the storefront. If you'd seen the middle design in this building, it had included storefront going all the way to the ground. So if you look at some of the images of the contemporary buildings that I have in the packet that I passed out, that's just not what you do. That's not what you design. For an institutional building that's, I forgot, 60,000 square feet for the library, that all of that goes out the window, and you can really become really creative and make the building really speak for itself, and it can be a strong design element. It can be like a museum, it can be a piece of art, anything. But this is a totally different design building. Sure.
Anyone else wish to present opinions? Oh, Mr. Finley, you wish to?
Should probably address that, right? Jake Finley, Karis Capital, we're the ultimate developer and owner of the project. Longtime resident of Geneva, moved here in 1989, and now sadly reside in Elburn. But
let the record show that you've said sadly Elburn. So
yes,
you know the mayor of Elburn watches these meetings.
Well, he can. That's fine. My wife does too, and she wants to live in Geneva. So. So just the business plan overall, obviously our partnership with Streetscape is how this whole thing started. We had a site on South Street under contract, which is 2 old medical office buildings, about 2 acres, right across from Burgess Norton. And John designed a killer plan. We came in front of Plan Commission and they said, great plan. We don't really like it on this site. Why don't you go get the Citron site and do it there? And 6 months later, here we are. Obviously, taking into account what Marquette went through, taking into account what the city and the people want, we've really tried to incorporate this mixed-use building on State Street. We're very involved in ownership of the Geneva Theater building, among some other commercial properties in the area and across the country. All in told, about $150 million worth of projects in Karis's little young career. And this mixed-use building is one that, unlike all the other projects, we personally, Karis, my partners and I will hold forever. It's our version of kids' college fund. And so the design, to be questioned as it was, it's nice, and we're, in the early iterations of what the building's going to look like. So. I just, tonight is not about what the building's ultimately going to look like or the size of the sidewalk. We designed a building with David and the team and the city staff, which has been incredible to work with over hundreds of hours to get the density that feels right on the site, to get density that might work financially on the site. And again, from a do the windows go all the way down or not? We're just not there yet. We don't have full-blown architectural renderings. We're in the preliminary PUD to get the as you see kind of read today. And to me, again, having lived here for a long time in the area for a long time, our office is in the theater building. Driving down 38 into Geneva, this building is going to be, in my opinion, the gateway to downtown Geneva from the west. And so it's ultimately important to me, not just to keep the tenant on the first floor and all the residents happy, but knowing that myself and my partners are going to own this a long time, that it's going to represent Geneva. And our architects were out today walking the streets of Geneva, getting a feel for what that is. We're not going to build something that isn't Geneva through and through, as we are, because this is the only reason we're doing this project. If this site, same metrics were in St. Charles or Batavia or certainly Elburn, we wouldn't be doing it. And so, and if it wasn't for Streetscape, again, we wouldn't be doing this project as well. So that's just a little color to the project. I'm happy to answer any questions. We are really excited about it and really appreciative to the staff for all their help through this process.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Finley specifically? Alderman Swanson?
How confident are you that you're going to be able to rent out the retail?
Ultimately, very confident. We've got a concept that we've been working nationally and locally with that is what we think is what the downtown is missing. And it's, not to tease you with a concept, but there's a lack of a market type concept downtown Geneva where you can get food on the go, you can get your essentials on the go, and you can walk to it, you can spend time at it, you can grab a bottle of wine and eat at it. And there's some really cool boutique national concepts that we've spent an enormous amount of time traveling the country finding, soliciting, talking to, and in talks on lease with.
And they're working now in other locations.
Killing it in other locations.
And that brings me to the next question, which would be, how are you going to handle parking for both the commercial entities and then the residents?
Yeah, so the residents are all taken care of. Everyone has their own spot. These are 20...
reserved spots.
Correct. These are 20 one-bedroom apartments. Obviously, the single family have their own garages.
And where are they going to be on that map?
Which
for the residents, for the apartment residents?
Is there a mouse?
top left.
Yeah, so of this parking lot, there'll be 20 of those spots dedicated for the residents.
Facing the gold building.
Well, so, and what you can't see in this is these are all covered spots. So the first floor of the building is 5,400 square feet. Second and third floor are 8,000. So it's cantilevered on the second and third floor above those parking spots. So there'll be some premium covered parking spots. One for, two for ADA accessibility for the retail, and then some of which for the residents, and then across the street, some of which for residents, some of which dedicated for retail, as well as all of the new spots, down Richard Street. This is something that we deal with all the time. I wish.
And I guess I'm asking how you're going to handle. Is it going to be signage? How are you going to? If I drive up, how am I going to know that I'm not supposed to park here?
Yeah, it's going to be signage.
I'm going to be in a rush. I want to get into the store. I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to be in there for 5 minutes. Those things happen.
Yeah.
So how are you going to deal with that?
Yeah, signage
And who will?
and I mean that's what we deal with all the time at the theater building, at our other properties downtown Geneva. This is urban, right? This is not, we talked to Burgess Norton and we said, why don't we just make all of this parking? And, they might for their employees, but, it'd be great if there was a parking deck back there or a parking deck somewhere in the city, behind the courthouse perhaps. We've got a parking problem downtown Geneva. What we're trying to create is an experience that the tenants are taken care of, and the retail concept is something that people will walk to, park to, and walk to, just like they do the 50 restaurants that don't have any dedicated parking on 3rd Street.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Ruby.
I'm curious about the one-bedroom apartments. I would think that could be a lot of couples, potentially, with 2 cars.
So there's 4 apartments above Old Town. They have 0 parking on site, and there could be 8 people living there. I have no idea where they park. There are smaller units, 650, 700 square feet. There could be younger couples to that point.
Sure.
But they are 1 bedroom, so we know it's not, 2, younger, single people living there. But that's, I guess that's almost a market risk we're willing to take, knowing that there's additional street parking, additional retail parking at night. We're going to try and figure out, from a property management standpoint, how to utilize some of those spots even during the day for the retail component, knowing that people leave. I believe that cars are going away in 7 years, and driverless cars are going to eliminate 90% of the cars. So we want to build stuff that reflects that, and maybe not on the record for Uber, but this is walkable to a lot of things, including the train. So if 2 people live there, maybe one's walking to the train and one's driving somewhere else. So.
Okay. And one more question. I'm just curious. I really like a lot of the architectural ideas from the gentleman that spoke.
If he's an architect for hire,
Well, I'm just curious if as a council we like those ideas, how, what steps can we take to voice those preferences? Or can we? Is that even an option?
We're not going to build something that's cost prohibitive just because it's really pretty. We're going to, like I said earlier in my little dissertation, I'm not going to build something that my partners and I don't want to own forever, and that we're proud of. David would be the best to address, the final aesthetics of that, I think.
I think there's a final PUD approval component that would require a more detailed review, where we'd have architectural elevations with building materials shown, and we'd be able to review that and stipulate conditions of approval on that request. Again, the preliminary PUD is to establish the parameters for which they can go and develop those final PUD plans within.
Sure.
And to give an overall sense of the character of the development. So.
Sure. Yeah, it seems it would make logical sense to know the character at the beginning that we're going for, rather than go back to the drawing board at the end of the project. That's all. I was just trying to communicate.
And I guess
ask about that.
I guess we look to the council then, if these images don't represent the character that we're hoping to achieve, we can provide that direction now.
Sure. Okay.
So
yeah, I'd be curious to hear other people's thoughts on that. Thank you.
Alderman Kilberg.
This is just informational question. The area to the east of the bike path, is there, as far as ownership, does the city have some ownership, if I remember correctly, of some area east of the bike path? Now, it doesn't technically think east would be this way on your site plan here, but I'm saying to the below the bike path there, what portion would the city have ownership of?
I can pull up, we have a detailed exhibit that shows that, but there is a portion.
I know, I'm just though, I mean, if we're looking at areas for potential parking, there might be a possibility that some of that could be developed into additional parking.
Well, there's, and this is a limited, it's maybe 5 feet between the bike path and the property line. The city does own, we have some right-of-way in this area and some city-owned parcels in this area that we've authorized consent for the consideration of this application. But I don't know that there's enough.
Sufficient for parking?
Additional room for parking there.
I have a question.
Alderman Gilbert, anything else, sir?
No, that's all, I'm sorry.
Alderman McGowan?
Sorry. Okay, David, I don't know if this question is for you or not, but I'm curious to know more about that house, that single-family house that's on the property. I assume that's vacant. How long has it been vacant, and would that just be demolished? Like, what's the story with that?
As it's proposed to be demolished, I don't know how long it's been vacant. I don't recall a time it was occupied. And I've been here 9.5 years. Right, so right now.
So
Sure.
the house and the building up front, we've offered fire, SWAT, and police to train in while we do some stuff on the back of the site and start the site improvement. So we're hoping, we know both buildings are totally vacant, have been for a long time, and we hope that the fire does a number on that White House for us. So,
I mean, are there like architectural elements inside that could be salvaged, or has it all been stripped already?
Of which house?
In that house,
it's
doors and. You're
no,
shaking your
they
head
have
back there, no.
They have to take everything out before they do any training.
Yeah.
Doors, windows, all that kind of stuff, but
There's nothing really of interest in there?
no, it's scary. It's, yeah, frightening. So unlivable, uninhabitable.
Okay.
I wouldn't walk in there. Actually, I only stepped in before the SWAT got there.
Thank you. That's all for me.
That's all? Alderman Burkhart?
Jake, could you walk us, or why don't you walk us through the setbacks for the single-family homes and the townhomes as they relate to other homes in the area?
well-
And maybe talk about the quiet wall and
Sure, sure.
These are
So-
real on top of each other,
So
right?
the single-family homes, we have what we call an active wall and a quiet wall. The quiet wall is if you have a 29-foot wide lot, there's 6 inches to that property line on the quiet wall side, and then 3.5 feet on the other side. So in the tightest area of the homes, which is generally you can see in the center. Let's look at this guy right here. So this would be the quiet wall, and there would be a 6-inch setback at this point. At this point, which is about 16 to 18 feet, that would be 3.5 feet away from the other property line. And then in the front sections, the home is about 18 feet. So the quiet wall does not have windows. It is fire rated. And it really ensures total privacy between home to home, you know, when you're in an urban scale kind of setting. I grew up in a city and I had neighbors next door, and you knew what was going on with the neighbors next door. So that's a nice feature. And then because we're kind of on this, what we're calling the active wall, we're kind of setting this back in and out. That lets light into the center of the house, which is really important. So at the tightest point, you'll be 4 feet away, but that occurs for about 18 feet only on this lot. In this case, this is 150 feet deep. We have 3 lot sizes. They're all 29 foot wide, but we have lot sizes that are, these guys are 100, and then we have 125s and 150s. So the deeper lots would allow for a detached garage and a yard, or somewhat of a, you know, kind of a connecting link to the garage. On the townhomes, This is about 30, and I don't have that exact, but it's about 34 feet here. And then, you know, it kind of varies from this point to, you know, to the furthest point here. This is about just for perspective, this is 25 feet wide, so that's probably in the 15-foot range, and this is probably more 40 feet at this point here at the deeper setback for the homes. In the backs, a minimum of a 6-foot apron off of the garages. But in some cases, like has been done in the Skokie project, customers have preferred to move the garage back to get a couple more parking spaces if they have, you know, extra cars. So there's a lot of, you know, variation in the depths and what can happen, but the widths are pretty consistent. We kind of covered that ground from a fire prevention, life safety standpoint in Libertyville. Worked very well in Skokie. So this is proven.
Those Fonzie units, which I love, because of family flexibility, I could see,
Yes.
you know, when you have the grown kids move back in, or your in-laws want to live with you, the
Yes.
6 months they're in here, or it could be a rental unit,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
So the homeowner would keep the ownership
Yes.
of that, and
Yes.
then how many of these units are eligible for these accessory dwelling
Only,
units?
you know what, they're only eligible on the deeper lots because you need that extra couple of, or that extra parking space. But we would expect probably, you know, maybe 4, 5, 6 of these, probably not on every home.
And it would be something they would do when under construction?
Correct. It would be kind of cost prohibitive for them to come back and add something above the garage. Now, they may end up just, you know, finishing out the shell of it, which we would have to provide parking for. Those will be pretty cool.
And then the townhomes you had to go through HPC for because, historic preservation,
correct.
because they're in the, and
Yes.
what changes did you make to the townhomes?
The townhomes, the overall elevation of the townhomes, we were kind of respectful of what was going on in the neighborhood with the various frame houses. So we have a lot of variety on the front. So that wasn't really at issue. What was of concern to the historic group that we presented to was the height, and we ended up reducing the height by a couple of feet. We originally had 40 feet. We said that we would take it down to 38 feet with the goal to get it to 36 feet. And then we're varying a lot of the kind of the shapes on the roof to break down the vertical scale of the building. And then one other point of discussion was, you know, there was an idea to eliminate these parking spaces and add some green space there, and we thought that the parking was a nice feature to have. And then the other discussion with the historic group was they thought maybe aligning this line and making it parallel with Citron Place. But, you know, our preference is to, you know, really provide that green space in the front of the homes, which we think is much nicer. So those were kind of the three key things. A couple of the neighbors were there, the gentleman kind of kitty corner, and then directly across we're at the Plan Commission, and I believe it Michael, forgot his last name right now. He owns that one restaurant in town, but he's kitty corner, and he wrote a nice letter of support. And we did follow up with him and addressed his specific concerns.
And he couldn't be here tonight, and I do have a letter he wants me to read later, so, so those, the parking spots on the private alley could be guest spots if you had a party or guest
Yes.
spots, and then you'd
Yeah.
have the diagonal spots across
Yep,
the way too,
there's,
right?
and there's, yeah, lots of spaces here as well as here. And this is significant, like on the School Street project, we probably have about a third of the spaces that are shown here, and it works.
And homeowners association for?
There'll be a separate homeowners association for the single-family homes, and then a separate association for the townhomes. And then, of course, the management company Jake will deal with the commercial build, or the mixed-use building.
Good. All right, thank you.
Alderman McGowan.
Thank you. Okay, so John, there was some mention earlier of the trees that were going to be removed along Richard Street.
Yes.
But I do see other, you know, trees in your design.
Yes.
So are you planning on replacing, do you have to pay a fee to the city in order to remove those trees, or?
Well, relative to the trees, there is a very detailed landscaping plan that we submitted preliminarily, and then there'll be a final landscaping plan that will more, you know, the whatever trees are being taken down, and there's only a few. In terms of Richard Street, there's kind of a couple of trees right, we were down at the site again today, right in here. There might be a tree we could keep, which we'll try, but most of the mature trees are on the other side, because at one point, this was the, you know, the Citron building. So if you go there, this is void of trees. There's some, you know, there's some trees on the other property site right here. So, you know, we'll have tons of landscaping in that courtyard.
Do you have to pay any kind of fee, or is there anything you need to do in order to remove the trees? Are there parkway trees you're removing?
David probably could answer that.
There are a few parkway trees along Richard Street, kind of where this, where the on-street parking is being provided. So they can't be replaced there because they're being replaced with parking. So when we get the final landscape plans, if they're not replacing those parkway trees as required by the ordinance, they have an option to pay in lieu of. And then we can plant those trees elsewhere where we have those opportunities.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Alderman Radecki.
Yeah, just a couple of quick questions. The apartments will be true one-bedroom apartments and not studios?
Correct, yes, there is a separate room.
And can you give us an idea of what the rent's going to be on those, as well as the, a ballpark for the single-family homes and townhouses where you think they're
Price points, the apartments are about just over 700 square feet, and in the range will be in the probably $1,400 to $1,500 range per month, which is about $2 a foot, which is right around the market place for a new product, perhaps a little more.
They're going to be high amenity, nice.
Yeah, they'll be awesome. You know, new interiors, great space. The single family homes were, you know, we're plugged. Although we got the Libertyville pricing wrong. We thought between 500,000 and 700,000, and this was back in the kind of the housing crisis days. We were off. They were 535 to $1.4 million. So we would suspect they'll be in the mid 600 range to start, the mid to high 600s for the single family homes, and the townhomes in the low 500s
To start,
which I think is consistent with some of the other townhome products in the in town.
Thank you.
Mr. Campbell.
Good evening. My name's Colin Campbell, 18 South 6th Street. While I am south of State Street, we are still about a stone's throw away, so we've been involved in this since the first Marquette hearing. And I think I've been to every one of the city meetings, HPC, Plan Commission, and City Council that has had anything to do with this. And I have been honored to be associated with a large number of people on the Richard Street area who had a little pushback on the Marquette apartments. And I've been in contact with several people. Everybody that I am aware of likes this plan. And they think that this would be beneficial for the neighborhood, that working with the city to get the details right, that it will improve property values, and certainly is the best plan that I think we have seen. On the issue of how the multi-purpose building should look, as I know you have all heard from our preservation planner many times, the state and federal regulations and guidelines on working within an historic district, and I realize that this is not a historic district. The single-family homes, the multi-purpose building, are not in the historic district, but they discourage trying to recreate history. But I think that a building that fits in the downtown and looks appropriate to the downtown is very achievable. As you would remember, there was a lot of discussion about the townhomes that were built on the corner of 4th Street and Campbell. And if you have been by there recently, they've already sold one, They have pretty much finished them. They are very much cookie-cutter contemporary townhomes, but because of the detailing and the cladding and the landscaping, I think they fit very nicely into the historic district, which was the plan all along. So it's not a recreation of history, but it certainly fits in, and I'm sure that you can work something out that will do that. But in general, I think that, and I can't speak for everybody in the area, but I can certainly speak for those that I have talked with, there is approval of this. And I think that it should go forward and hopefully come to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. From the south side of the room, anyone else wish to speak, ask a question, seek clarification? Yes, ma'am. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Carol Lullemeyer, and I live at 108 Richard Street, right across the street from where this development is planned. And I purchased the property 6 years ago as a retirement property and renovated it with the expectation that there would be a new library across the street eventually. That didn't materialize, and along came Marquette. And we all know how that story went. So I am delighted to add my stamp of approval, if you will, to this proposed development. I feel like it's a wonderful transition between the neighborhood and the downtown area, as well as being a wonderful addition to the State Street front line and a welcoming addition to the downtown area. One of the reasons I purchased the house that I did is because I wanted to be able to walk to downtown and to enjoy all of the benefits of living in a established community with lots of character and lots of wonderful things going on. And I think that this is going to add to that ambiance, to the character of Geneva, and to the neighborhood particularly. And I just wanted to say thank you for making this even a possibility. I just want to say also, I was very glad to hear, my house is located right across the street from the house that is facing towards State Street. And I was given to understand that that house is not eligible for a FONSA unit. And I'm very glad to hear that because I don't want people looking in my windows. Thank you.
Now, you do understand that the single-family homes will be purple?
Yes.
So, okay.
That's okay.
On the record, got it, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else from the south side of the room? From the north side of the room? Back to the dais. Alderman Burkhart.
It's a good time to read Mr. Olison's letter. So Michael Olison couldn't be here tonight. As we all know, he lives at 202 North 6th Street. He asked me to read this. Please accept my written support for the proposed development of the Citron Place property. I had the opportunity to meet with John McClellan with Streetscape Development on Tuesday, April 10th. We reviewed the plan as currently proposed, and I do support it. The concept has been presented in public meetings with a number of neighbors present. It was generally well received. A number of suggestions were made to the developer addressing concerns by the neighbors. It is my belief that the developer has made necessary changes to address our concerns. Though not meant to be a complete list, I wish to highlight certain aspects of the proposed development which are important in my support. I believe the placement of the road curving through the property from Richards to Peyton is very good. There will be more local traffic. However, it will not encourage additional cut-through traffic as might occur should 7th Street have been extended to Peyton through the site. An added benefit to this road placement is that it will not overly interfere with the commercial truck traffic already seen on Peyton Street by Burgess Norton. I support the commercial apartment building at the south end of the site for 2 reasons. I like the idea of a single tenant for the first floor commercial space. Due to the footprint, whatever business eventually leases the space will need to have a significant size and financial stability. Their hope is to attract an upscale food market. This would be a welcome addition to the neighborhood and will not compete with 7-Eleven. The 21-bedroom apartments will add much-needed residents to the downtown and benefit our local businesses. The single-family homes they are proposing allow for a nice transition with the current surrounding neighborhood. The reduction in the number and overall height of the townhomes on the northeast edge of the property directly address the concerns of the residents in the 100 block of North Sixth Street. For these major reasons, I do support the proposed project on the former Citron property. I do have an additional comment regarding stormwater management. There is currently a problem with water runoff during heavy rains. The City of Geneva should take advantage of the property's development to address this problem. Thank you for your work on behalf of the citizens of Geneva. Respectfully submitted, Michael Olson. Thank you.
Anyone else in the dais? Either questions for the gentleman before us and/or our friends Jake and Rolf? Last chance from the audience. This is just item J we're going to vote on. We're going to vote on each item, J, K, L, and M separately. Is it the consensus of the committee that we have addressed all the issues relative to those 4 items? So we can just go quickly through. We're not going to vote on them together. We'll vote on them separately. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, on item 3J, as in just because we're having so much fun, it was offered by Alderman Marks, seconded by Alderman Burghardt. Would the committee prefer a voice vote or a roll call vote?
Roll call.
Roll call vote it is. Madam Recording Secretary, when you are ready, please take the roll.
Tara Burkhardt?
Aye.
Donald Cummings? Aye. Becky Ruby? Aye. Dean Kilburg?
Aye.
Craig Maladra?
Aye.
Richard Marks?
Aye.
Jean McGowan?
Aye.
Jim Rodecki?
Aye.
Robert Swanson?
Aye.
The motion passes with 9 affirmative votes, 0 nay votes, and 1 absent. We move on to item 3K, recommend draft ordinance rezoning, zoning map amendment, the subject realty from the B2 Business District to the B6 Planned Unit Development Business District, presented by Karis Capital LLC, known as Citron Place.
So moved.
Alderman Marks makes the motion.
Second.
Alderman Swanson makes the second. I trust there's no additional questions or comments regarding this matter. The committee prefer roll call or voice vote?
Voice vote.
Voice vote it is. All in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes with 9 affirmative votes, 0 nay votes, 1 absent. Item 3I is to recommend draft
L.
L. Good Lord. 3L, recommend draft ordinance rezoning, zoning map amendment, the subject realty from the I-2 General Industrial District to the B6 Planned Unit Development Business District, as presented by Karis Capital LLC, known as Citron Place. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Marks makes this motion,
Second.
seconded by, I believe it was Radecki. Oh, Swanson, you guys sound just alike. Questions or comments? I will assume a voice vote is sufficient. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes with 9 affirmative votes, no nay votes, no abstentions, and 1 absent. Item J, is that a Z? I know, I'm kidding. Let's see. Item 3M, recommend draft ordinance granting preliminary planned unit development plan approval for Citron Place as presented by Karis Capital LLC and our friends at Streetscape. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Ruby, seconded by McGowan. Questions or comments regarding item 3M? Is the voice vote sufficient for the committee? All in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes with 9 affirmative votes, 0 nay votes, no abstentions, and 1 absent. Item 4, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, sir, would you like to say anything in
Thank
closing?
you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, please note that while this was unanimous at the committee of the whole meeting, and while it is traditionally advanced to the next scheduled council meeting, that next scheduled council meeting is not till May the 7th. It is unclear whether it will be held on May 7th. We've still got some stuff to talk about, as David and the city attorney and the city administrator knows, but we will certainly advise everybody accordingly via our development tweets, texts, emails, etc. So at the earliest, it's May 7th, not April 30th, okay? Is there anybody out there, Chuck? I don't hear you. Is there anybody? New business from anyone in the audience this evening about anything? From the dais, Alderman McGowan.
Thank you, Mayor Burns. I'm currently in need of volunteers to help me with a special event that's this weekend. It's Misericordia Candy Days, and this is an organization that's near and dear to my heart. Misericordia is a home for adults and children with developmental disabilities, and they have this annual fundraiser called Candy Days where volunteers pass out candy. For the past few years, it's been little bags of Jelly Belly jelly beans. And you'll get a little tag which explains all about Misericordia and in exchange for donations. So it really helps them achieve their goals. And we were graciously allowed this year to have volunteers stationed at the Geneva Ace Hardware, the Geneva 7-Eleven, and also the Starbucks right in downtown Geneva at 3rd and State. So I'm kind of expanding my role a little bit this year. And so I'm looking for volunteers to help me on Friday and Saturday. So if anyone wishes to volunteer, this would be great for parents. Kids are welcome if they're with an adult, or great for high school students in need of give hours. You can contact me through the City of Geneva website, or just send an email to me at aldmcgowan, MCGOWAN, @geneva.il.us. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else from the dais? If there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn this committee of the whole meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Marks.
Second.
Seconded by Swanson.
Yes.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. This meeting is adjourned. Cameras and microphones are off.